Kingdom Hearts is a video game series that I absolutely adore, and it's one that has greatly shaped who I am today, with its convoluted yet incredibly emotional and endearing story, likeable characters, and its surreal blend of classic and modern Disney with Square Enix properties such as Final Fantasy and The World Ends With You. One of Kingdom Hearts' greatest qualities though, that probably sticks with most people who are fans of the series, is its outstanding soundtracks, composed by legendary video game composer Yoko Shimomura, alongside several other composers such as Takeharu Ishimoto, Tsuyoshi Sekito, and more, who all lend their unique composition styles, combined with several music tracks taken from classic Disney films such as The Nightmare Before Christmas and The Little Mermaid, to help create diverse and emotionally captivating soundtracks that are all both memorable and consistent in quality. As such, it would make sense then that now that the first saga in the Kingdom Hearts storyline has been concluded, as of Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind, it would make sense that the next step forward for the series would be to look back to the past, and what better way to do that than through the series soundtracks and the memories that people have made with them. Which brings us to the topic of today's video, the latest entry in this dearly beloved series, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, which was released for PlayStation 4, Xbox One and Nintendo Switch in November 2020. Melody of Memory, unlike the other entries in the series, is a rhythm game that tasks the player with playing through over 140 music tracks from across the entire series, reliving several iconic moments from the series' past in an attempt to decipher what exactly happened to Sora, the series' protagonist, at the conclusion of Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind. The game was directed, as always, by series director Tetsuya Nomura, and was developed by indieszero, the developers behind another popular Square Enix rhythm game series, Theatrhythm, which is a series I personally am a huge fan of. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say that Theatrhythm Final Fantasy Curtain Call is my absolute favourite rhythm game, and the one I normally use as a comparison when judging the quality of other rhythm games. So when I heard the news that they were making a rhythm game based on my favourite video game series, with a selection of tracks from across the entire series, and that it was being developed by the Theatrhythm developers, I have to say I was incredibly excited for Melody of Memory, to say the least. So, how did it turn out? Was my optimism well placed, and does Melody of Memory manage to respectively showcase the soundtracks of the games I love in a fun and engaging manner? Or is it nothing more than a repetitive cash grab that wastes the potential it had? Well, watch on and find out as I review Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory. For the purposes of this review, I've played the game to full completion on PlayStation 4 Pro, on proud difficulty, 100% completing the main story mode, and synthesizing and playing through all of the music tracks in the game. And to be fair, by the time I've completed this review, I'll probably have platinumed the game. If you like this review, be sure to like this video and comment below with your thoughts on both the review and the game itself if you've played it, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. Anyway, without any further ado, let's deep dive into the latest entry in the Kingdom Hearts series, Melody of Memory. The story mode of Melody of Memory is handled very interestingly for a rhythm game. The concept of the storyline, according to what director Tetsuya Nomura stated during interviews, is that it is meant to be seen as a retrospective of the series through its music, with the game's world map taking you through each of the worlds and memorable moments from each game, in order, culminating in some tracks from Kingdom Hearts 3 and new story content. In that sense, the game's cutscenes mostly comprise of recaps of each of the games in the series, with the game's protagonist Kairi narrating the events that transpired in each entry.
Leaving Terra no time for disappointment, the three immediately received word that creatures called the Unversed had emerged to threaten the world of light, and Master Xehanort had gone missing.
Once you've reached the end of the world map, however, you'll reach some new story content that works alongside the limit cut story content from the Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind DLC to elaborate on the conclusion of Kingdom Hearts 3 and establish where the series will be going from here on out. I won't go into any spoilers regarding new story elements introduced in Melody of Memory in this video, however I will say that if you're interested in this game solely for those new elements and nothing else, then this game definitely won't be your cup of tea, as there is only about 30 minutes of new story cutscenes set after the events of Remind, and whilst it is important stuff that sets up the next game in the series, it's definitely not enough to justify the price of admission alone. The actual way the story is structured as a whole though is really great, and it's a great way to revisit your memories of the previous games through the medium of song. The world map is comprised of 3 different types of node. First, there are the Disney and original worlds, which usually have 2 songs attached, most commonly the field and battle themes of those worlds. Next is the darkened worlds, which are single tracks set in a darkened version of an adjacent world. These tracks are often various boss or battle themes from throughout the series. Finally, there are boss fight worlds where you and your party will face off against a memorable boss from the Kingdom Hearts series, usually with the corresponding boss theme attached. Each music track in the World Tour mode has 3 different missions that can be completed as well, ranging from hitting a certain amount of notes, clearing on a certain difficulty, or defeating a certain amount of enemies, and so on. These challenges offer some replay value, and completing a mission will give you a star corresponding to the game that track originated from, which can be used to unlock progression barriers to the next set of worlds in the story mode. You also get some rewards from clearing some of the worlds, mostly consisting of synthesis materials or collectible artwork. The best rewards for clearing worlds are usually the synthesis materials required to craft more songs, such as the various character themes from the series like Sora and Roxas, or some of the Disney movie original songs like Circle of Life and A Whole New World. It should also be mentioned that clearing a song in the World Tour mode is what unlocks that track in the track selection mode, so clearing all of the songs at the very least is a must if you want to easily replay the tracks later on. It's also how you unlock the other playable teams of characters, so in terms of unlockables, the story mode definitely does feel rewarding. Completing certain worlds will reward you with a cutscene where Kairi narrates to you some of the events of the corresponding game, so it really does feel like you're revisiting each game in sequence as you listen to the incredible music scores. Some of the flashback cutscenes also provide more information about some of the events of those games as well, which is a nice bonus and helps to further one's understanding of the series' often confusing and convoluted narrative. Overall, I personally really enjoyed the game's story mode. It's not too long, with a full completion run with every mission taking me around 15 hours to achieve, and a casual run taking between 6 to 8 hours depending on skill level and skipping worlds where possible. The way the story mode is presented within the world map view and the mission structure is also really endearing, and does a brilliant job of making the player feel like they're making progress, with the constant rewards and flashback cutscenes making for an overall enjoyable experience. Whilst the new story content on offer is brief, it feels just as important as any of the other Kingdom Hearts side games in that regard, and does a great job of setting the pieces in place ready for the next main installment in the series, whenever it comes. Now let's move on to the core gameplay of Melody of Memory, which is comprised of pressing buttons in time with the music to rack up points, defeat enemies and clear the various music stages in the game, whilst playing as a team comprised of 3 memorable Kingdom Hearts characters. There are 4 different teams you can play as within the game, who for the most part all play the same, with the only real differences being visual, with different character models and attack animations. Though I believe their individual stats somewhat differ as well, but the leveling and character stats in this game are fairly unimportant and don't really amount to much in the grand scheme of things. The first team is Team Classic, which is comprised of the Kingdom Hearts 1 iteration of Sora, the series protagonist, as well as Donald Duck and Goofy. This is the team you start off with and will be using throughout the World Tour mode until you reach the point where you unlock the other teams. The second team, which is unlocked through completing the Kingdom Hearts 1 portion of the World Tour mode, is Team Days, which is comprised of Roxas, Xion, and Axel, using their appearances from Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. I personally use this team for quite a lot of my playthrough with the game because it's the team I'm most emotionally attached to. You unlock the other two teams around the same time after beating the Kingdom Hearts 2 and Recoded portions of the World Tour mode. The third team is Team Birth by Sleep, comprised of the protagonists of the Kingdom Hearts game with the same name, Terra, Ventus and Aqua. The fourth and final team is Team 3D, comprised of the Dream Drop Distance version of Riku, as well as Meow Wow and Komori Bat Dream Eaters. Whichever team you choose to play as will mostly just depend on your personal preferences of which team you like the most, and as mentioned earlier won't really affect your playstyle or the overall gameplay in any meaningful way. In some of the Disney worlds, you'll sometimes find one of your party members replaced with a Disney character to change things up a bit and make it feel a bit more like you're actually visiting the world through song, though admittedly only a few of the Disney worlds make use of this feature. In terms of the gameplay itself, there are 3 different types of music stages, each with their own different style of gameplay that adds some variety to the game. The first is the field battles, which is the most predominant gameplay style and is utilised with most of the tracks in the game. The way this gameplay style works is that your team of characters runs along a music track that flows through a location from the series past that corresponds with the track. Whilst you are running along this track, various obstacles such as enemies, boxes and barrels must be dealt with by pressing one of the 3 attack buttons, X, L1 and R1 on a DualShock controller, and their equivalent on other controllers, in time with the music, with combinations of the 3 needing to be pressed simultaneously when dealing with 2 or more enemies at a time. Sometimes you also need to jump over enemy attacks or to reach enemies with attacks, which can be done with the press of a designated jump button, circle on a DualShock, the equivalent on any other controller, and you can also glide by holding down the button, which is used to clear glide markers that occasionally pop up during songs. Finally, there are also ability crystals that need to be triggered to defeat larger enemies or enemies off the track, which can be done by the press of yet another button, triangle on a DualShock, the equivalent on other controllers. I really like this gameplay style as it manages to adapt the classic Kingdom Hearts combat formula into a rhythm game with few concessions, and it definitely helps to make it stand out on its own when it comes to unique gameplay for a rhythm game. By using the same jumping, gliding and attack controls as the regular Kingdom Hearts games, as well as utilising reaction commands to cast abilities, it also manages to maintain that Kingdom Hearts feeling as you're playing it. The second gameplay style found in the game is the boss battles, which are sadly only used for a single hand's worth of music tracks in the game. These have your team of characters facing off against a memorable boss from the series past, such as Xemnas, Ansem Seeker of Darkness, and Maleficent, as you press buttons in time with the music. A lot of the same controls apply here as in the field battle stages, however, instead of jumping and gliding, 2 new mechanics are introduced that are also utilised in the other gameplay style that I'll mention in a bit. These mechanics are flicks and holds. Flicks require you to flick the controller's analog sticks in a specific direction in time with the music, and holds require you to press and hold an attack button down until you reach the end of the note, where you'll release at the right time to fully nail the beat. Boss battles also feature dark mode sections where a selection of notes will attain a dark aura and must be pressed as perfectly as possible in time with the music in order to avoid getting hit by the boss's ultimate attack. These stages are a lot of fun, but as I mentioned before, there are only so few of them over the course of the entire game that it's a little disappointing that there weren't more stages like it in the game. Still, because there are so few of them, it does make them feel all the more grander when they do show up during the game's story. The final gameplay type is the memory dive segments, where your team glides along a track as a movie plays in the background, usually comprised of cutscenes from the series that correspond to the track being played. These operate very similarly in gameplay as the boss battles, with the implementation of flicks and holds. The only difference is that the track is vertical, similar to the field battles, instead of horizontal. These tracks are usually a lot calmer than the other tracks in the game, perhaps because they knew people would want to watch the cutscenes behind them as they were playing the stage. All of the cutscene montages are great, by the way, and really make the stages feel all the more emotional and special. For an example, playing through Musique pour la tristesse de Chien, as clips of the character in question from across the entire series play, creates an incredibly emotional experience and really makes you reminisce on the memories you've had with the series through that character. Overall, when it comes to the various different gameplay styles on offer, they all add a lot of variety to the core gameplay and manage to make it feel like you're playing a Kingdom Hearts game, yet somehow in a completely different genre, which is commendable in itself. In terms of difficulty options, you have beginner, standard and proud difficulty levels that mostly just differentiate by changing the amount of enemies and complexity of the button presses in a song. I personally played through on proud difficulty, as it's what I like to do with Kingdom Hearts games, and I found it to be a mostly pleasant experience. Though, some songs were absolute nightmares to complete due to the difficulty, but thankfully there are a ton of extra modifiers outside of the core difficulty options that allow you to mould your gameplay experience to your preferred level of challenge. Firstly, there are several items you can equip before going into a stage that offer various benefits, such as potions and high potions that restore your team's health when it reaches low enough, as well as item boosts that increase the drop rate of synthesis items and collectibles. XP boosts increase the amount of experience you'll gain upon clearing the stage, and finally the summoning star allows you to start the stage with King Mickey as a fourth party member, who will make it easier to hit notes as well as resurrect you to full health when you lose all of your health. These items are all great benefits when on harder difficulties, as they alleviate some of the challenge if you just want to clear the stages but don't want to resort to lowering the difficulty, because I will admit, the game feels at its best when you're hitting a load of notes to the beat quickly on proud, compared to on beginner difficulty where you're hitting one note every 2 seconds. Interestingly, there are even more difficulty options on top of that, though for some odd reason they are only relegated to the track selection mode, where you can replay any of these songs in the game. These extra difficulty options are one button mode and performer mode. One button mode, as the name suggests, allows for you to play through the songs in the game on any difficulty with only one button. It's a nice simple gameplay style that also doubles as a great accessibility option for those that are visually or kinetically impaired, though the fact that this option is only available in the track selection mode when you have to play through story mode to unlock the tracks in the first place makes it feel like a huge oversight not to include one button mode in the World Tour mode as well. The other gameplay style, performer mode, adds an extra layer of complexity that turns even the calmest of levels into a painful maelstrom of difficulty. How it works is that it adds extra notes alongside and in between existing notes that require a specific button not used in the standard gameplay style to be pressed. On DualShock, these would be L2, R2, square or an analog stick direction with tight timing to hit, but your controller will vary depending on the platform. I honestly haven't utilised this style much personally, as I'm quite comfortable with the difficulty on basic proud mode, and performer mode isn't required for any of the game's trophies or achievements to my knowledge, and only boosts your score for the stage, so I think it's a style that is mostly only going to be used by die-hard completionists, or people who crave an even greater challenge than the regular difficulty options provide. So, now that I've explained the various different gameplay styles and difficulty options, I think it's probably best to go over the various different modes the game has on offer aside from the standard World Tour mode, as there are quite a couple and some of them change the gameplay up in some very interesting ways. Firstly, there is the track selection mode, as I've mentioned earlier, which basically just acts as a way to quickly and easily play through any of the tracks you've unlocked in the World Tour mode, as well as access any of the extra difficulty options mentioned prior. It's fairly simple in its implementation, with a couple of options for sorting through all 150 tracks in the game, but it does its job well enough and you'll be able to find whichever song you're looking to play without much trouble. Next up, there is the Versus mode, where you can face off against other players online, or computer players in a competitive mode where you'll aim to outscore your opponent, whilst avoiding any obstacles that your opponent send your way. This mode differs in gameplay somewhat in the sense that as you hit notes, a small trick bar fills up underneath your health that, once full, sends a trick towards your opponent that will cause some problems, ranging from making the note markers or enemies invisible, to more annoying things such as causing hit enemies to temporarily obscure their view, or damaging them if they hit the note with anything other than perfect timing. Your enemy will be doing the same to you though, as you both attempt to clear the song, with the victor being the one to finish with the highest score, which leads to some incredibly competitive and surprisingly fun moments as you're both sending tricks to each other and struggling to succeed. I believe the Switch port of the game includes an exclusive multiplayer versus mode which allows you to compete with up to 8 friends in local multiplayer to compete for the highest score. Though, again, as I played through the game on PS4, which doesn't include that mode, I can't fully evaluate its quality, so that's going to be missing from this review. Sorry. If competitive play isn't your forte, however, the game also contains a fairly well implemented local co-op mode where one player plays as Sora and another Riku, and you play through a sample of the field battle songs from the main game, with each player sharing half of the music track and needing to work together to hit each note in time. This is a really fun mode to play through if you've got a friend or sibling, and does a good job of making the core field battle gameplay work with 2 people. Though admittedly it can be tricky timing your set of notes correctly at times because the other player handles some of the beats and you need to get used to that. Those are the core gameplay modes on offer in Melody of Memory, but there are a handful of additional menus that offer more stuff to do outside of gameplay. One example is the Synthesis menu, where you can use materials obtained during gameplay to forge new songs, such as some of the character themes and Disney tracks I mentioned earlier, as well as the gameplay items such as potions and XP boosts. You can also synthesize profile pics for use in the multiplayer modes, as well as forge some of the collectible cards that can be obtained throughout the game. As far as extra modes go, you'll more than likely craft all of the useful synthesis options before your time with the game's story mode is over, so it does feel like the synthesis menu lacks the sort of longevity required for a game like this, especially since leveling up the Moogle rank doesn't really unlock anything of value, except to allow you to craft more basic materials, which can be just as easily obtained from playing the songs that drop them with an item boost equipped. Finally, there is the museum, which is where you'll be able to rewatch cutscenes from the story mode, watch the memory dive cinematics without needing to play the game, as well as a sound player to listen to the game's soundtrack. There is also a section that shows you all of the collectibles you've obtained thus far. These collectibles are mostly just screenshots of scenes from other games or renders of characters, keyblades or other things from across the series' history. Then there is a records section where you can track your stats such as playtime, songs cleared and in-game achievements cleared. Altogether, when it comes to the gameplay of Melody of Memory, there is a ton of content to do, and you'll always find something to entertain you when you're in the mood to jam to some classic Kingdom Hearts tracks. The gameplay itself is also incredibly fun and for the most part well implemented, with tons of variety to keep you from getting bored. It's not all perfect, however, as I experienced some nasty dropped inputs during songs with lots of quick button presses, but I managed to fix that by fiddling with the BGM timing in the settings menu and setting it to +1, which solved the issue and meant I could clear all the tracks in the game without feeling like I was being cheated out of notes that I should have hit. So if you encounter the same issue with dropped inputs as I did, make sure to fiddle with the BGM timing section in the settings menu to see if that will do anything to fix it. It did for me, it will probably do it for you, but that's not an assurance, it's just an assumption. Still, aside from that little issue, I enjoyed the gameplay of Melody of Memory across all game modes, and I had a ton of fun playing it even when I was spending long repetitive play sessions with the game. I could definitely say that if you're a fan of rhythm games, Melody of Memory is one of the greatest in terms of its gameplay, both in terms of actual functionality, as well as its variety of different playstyles. It's a game that I believe people of all skill sets would be able to play and experience almost everything the game has to offer without trouble. Since Melody of Memory is a game that mostly recaps previous entries in the series, you probably wouldn't be surprised to know that most of the art assets used throughout the game, such as the world environments and character models, are reused from the games they were taken from. The reason this is such a controversial thing is that most of the assets being reused are fairly low poly and are somewhat lacking in visual quality due to being taken from PlayStation 2, PSP and 3DS games, and due to the fact that this is a game running on current gen hardware for full price, it's difficult to really justify the visual design, at least on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Especially since this is the first game in the series to release after the incredibly stunning looking Kingdom Hearts 3. Though, judging by the fact that the unique Kingdom Hearts 3 worlds in Melody of Memory are all memory dives using cutscenes, it's fairly easy to see that they probably needed to use lower quality assets in order for the game to run on the Nintendo Switch, which is significantly less powerful than the other two systems, and took the opportunity to save time and money by reutilizing old assets. That's not to say that the implementation of these assets are lazy, however, as each world needed to be adjusted to cater to the music track running through it, and some of the worlds, in particular Neverland from 358 over 2 days, and the system sector from Recoded, appear to have been fully recreated to look up to par in quality with the other worlds in the game. The general user interface, music track, world map, and other unique assets created for this game are all really nice as well, and even though it reutilizes so much, it for the most part works in the game's favour, due to the whole point of the game itself being to be revisiting the series past through song, so seeing the worlds as they were back in the day whilst listening to the appropriate world music does a great job of achieving that nostalgic feeling. The game also does some neat things visually in terms of its beat placements, such as having hordes of Shadow Heartless looming in the distance before slowly approaching you to simulate the demon-tide boss that you'd normally be facing as that song was playing in the original game. Other situations similar to that are commonly found in some of the memory dive stages, where when characters in the cinematic behind the stage make exaggerated arm movements, such as Elsa in the Let It Go track, the beats usually have you flicking the analog sticks in the same direction at the same time as the character. It's neat little details like that really helps to heighten one's appreciation of the core design of the game, and the way it both visually and audibly takes you back to your memories of playing those games over the years. Really, there isn't that much else that you can say about the game's art style or assets aside from that. It's not bad at all, in fact at times it can really be quite a beautiful game in a sense, but it's highly iterative of that which came before it, and I can see some people definitely being turned off by it because of that, especially as it's a full price title, which is usually a price reserved for completely new games visually. Okay, now it's time to cover arguably the most important part of any rhythm game, the sound quality and song selection. Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory features over 140 tracks, with the final tally, if counting songs that have both Field Battle and Memory Dive versions, or Field Battle and Boss Battle versions, coming in at a total of 150 tracks, with songs from pretty much every entry in the series, alongside tracks from Disney films and various Kingdom Hearts arrangement albums. For the most part, the track list is comprehensive and covers many of the memorable worlds and moments of the series, though there are some noticeable omissions that I will mention in a bit that tarnish the whole nostalgic feel the game was going for. So, firstly let's cover the song selection in more detail, starting with what tracks can be found, then I'll go into what tracks aren't present and why I think it affects the overall package somewhat for me personally, and then afterwards I'll go into the overall sound quality of the tracks and how the gameplay meshes with the sound. Okay, so when it comes to Kingdom Hearts 1, there is around 33 tracks in total, including most world themes and battle themes. The game's end credits track Simple and Clean by Utada Hikaru is present in both Memory Dive and Field Battle formats, with most of the game's boss themes also being present. One Winged Angel from Final Fantasy VII is also present, as well as the secret ending music Another Side. Notable omissions include Dearly Beloved, most of the tracks that play during cutscenes such as Treasured Memories and Friends in My Heart, though I believe the latter is used as the music for the collection section in this game, and this game has its own unique version of Dearly Beloved that only plays during the title screen but isn't actually playable in-game. So it is present, just not playable. None of the Gummy Ship tracks are playable either, which is a shame considering how much you use the ship in Kingdom Hearts 1, though the world map music is used for the World Tour mode. Other notable omissions include any of the tracks from Deep Jungle, which was the Tarzan world, probably due to the same licensing issues with the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate that prevented the Tarzan world from ever reappearing after Kingdom Hearts 1. The 100-Acre Woods is also completely omitted, which is the weirdest exclusion to me, since it's one of the most prominent Disney worlds in terms of the amount of times it appeared in the series, appearing in a total of 5 games, including all 3 numbered releases, so its omission is startling and a little confusing. None of the characters from Winnie the Pooh appear in the collectibles either, which is incredibly absurd considering Chicken Little of all things is in the game. The orchestral version of Hikari is also missing, which is another weird omission, as it has a completely different feel as the lyrical Utada version, and was used throughout the series in quite memorable ways. Now let's move on to Chain of Memories, which only has 5 songs in total, those being Namine, Castle Oblivion, Forgotten Challenge, The Force in You, and Lord of the Castle. Initially, this seems like quite a small amount of songs in terms of representation, but what you have to consider with a lot of the handheld titles in the series like Chain of Memories, 358 over 2 days, and Recoded, is that their soundtracks only have a few original tracks, with most of their soundtracks consisting of slightly adjusted field and battle themes from Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. The only real omissions I can think of from Chain of Memories aside from the 100-Acre Wood tracks are Graceful Assassin and Scythe of Petals. Next up is Kingdom Hearts 2, which has the largest track selection out of all the games featured in this game. Firstly, the main character themes such as Roxas, Sora and Riku are present, as well as the opening movie version of Sanctuary by Utada Hikaru, and most of the field and battle themes unique to Kingdom Hearts 2. This includes the new tracks that were added to worlds that were also in Kingdom Hearts 1, such as The Underworld and What Lies Beneath from the Olympus Coliseum, and What a Surprise and Happy Holidays that featured in the Christmas Town portion of the Halloween Town world. Most of the boss music is also present, such as The 13th Struggle, Vim and Vigor, and Darkness of the Unknown, as well as boss music that was added in the final mix version of Kingdom Hearts 2, such as The Other Promise and Rage Awakened. Out of all the games in the series, it definitely feels like Kingdom Hearts 2 is definitely missing the least amount of iconic tracks, though the ones it does omit are a little disappointing to see. Firstly, Dearly Beloved is again not present in the track listing, with the orchestral version of Passion also not being included. The tracks related to the Gummy Ship are also not featured in this game either, which is, again, same with Kingdom Hearts 1, a shame as well. In terms of Disney World omissions, as with Kingdom Hearts 1 and Chain of Memories, 100-Acre Woods is also not present, however so is Port Royal, the world based on the Pirates of the Caribbean films. The reason why this world was omitted is more than likely due to Square and Disney not wanting to license the rights to use the likenesses of the actors from the movies. Most of the Atlantica song tracks are also omitted, but I think most people will consider that a blessing rather than a curse in this case. Now on to 358 over 2 days, which has a total of 6 songs. They are Musique pour la tristesse de Chien, Vector to the Heavens, the battle version of Another Side, and the Neverland Field, battle, and boss themes. In terms of original tracks, almost all of the tracks unique to that game are present, which is good. Though I am surprised that they went to the effort of including that game's version of Neverland and its unique tracks here, considering it's a world that I don't think many people really cared about or even remembered. Next up in the track listing is Recoded, which only features 2 songs, Wonder of Electron and No More Bugs. Not much to really talk about here, as it's a very small game in terms of its soundtrack, as well as in terms of its importance in the series as a whole. The only real notable omitted track here is Pretty Abilities, but aside from that, its representation is probably as much as to be expected. Birth by Sleep is next, which features a total of 26 tracks, including the character themes for the game's protagonists, Terra, Ventus and Aqua. All of the world, field and battle themes are present, alongside several of the iconic boss themes such as Enter the Darkness, Black Powder and Dismiss. Notable exclusions include the Ice Cream Beat and other Disney Town minigame exclusive tracks, as well as the Mirage Arena and Keyblade Graveyard tracks. Another notable omission is the version of the Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core theme used during the Olympus Coliseum as Zack's theme. Now on to Dream Drop Distance, which has a total of 17 tracks, with almost all of the world, field and battle themes present, as well as several of the more memorable boss themes such as L'Impeto Oscuro, L'Oscuria dell'Ignoto, and the Eye of Darkness. They even included the Kingdom Mix version of Calling from The World Ends With You, which is always nice to hear. Notable omissions this time around include all of the Symphony of Sorcery world tracks, which somewhat makes sense considering the tracks for that world are about 10 minutes long each and don't really work when cut down. Other omissions include the Dream Eater themes and a good portion of cutscene and boss tracks. 0.2 Birth by Sleep, a fragmentary passage, only has one track present in Melody of Memory, which is Wave of Darkness 1. Notable exclusions include the Mirror Illusion Aqua boss theme, as well as Wave of Darkness 2 and the various Dark World themes. Honestly though, it makes sense to only include one song considering 0.2 is only about 2 to 3 hours long and doesn't leave much of an impression in terms of its music, but still, the tracks omitted are still great tracks that would have been cool to play along to. The selection of tracks selected from Kingdom Hearts 3 though is easily the most disappointing in the game, with only 9 unique tracks in total. The reason this is so disappointing is because the Kingdom Hearts 3 soundtrack is in my opinion the pinnacle of the series in terms of composition and instrumentation quality, and with over 100 incredibly good tracks to choose from, the fact that only 9 tracks are present is incredibly disappointing. The tracks featured include the Toy Box field theme, the Kingdom of Corona field theme, the Monstropolis battle theme, Let It Go from Frozen, the San Francisco battle theme, the Keyblade Graveyard field theme, Rise of the Union, which is the track that plays during the Union Cross fanservice bit near the end of Kingdom Hearts 3, Dark Domination, and finally the game's end credits theme Don't Think Twice by Utada Hikaru. Now, I acknowledge the fact that Melody of Memory and Kingdom Hearts 3 were in development simultaneously, which made it difficult for the devs to include more tracks from 3, or at least that's the excuse Nomura gave in interviews leading up to release anyway. But the amount of notable omissions is quite staggering and greatly damages the whole revisiting the series through song theme the game was going for. Firstly, Olympus, the Caribbean and 100 Acre Woods are completely omitted with no Kingdom Hearts 3 representation, despite the fact that Olympus had tons of new tracks that weren't featured in any previous iteration of the world, and the Caribbean probably has my favourite Disney World battle theme. Secondly, the worlds that were included only featured one song, which was either one of the field themes or one of the battle themes, or in the case of Arendelle, just the track Let It Go from the movie Frozen. None of the boss themes aside from the final boss theme are featured either, which is a huge shame considering Kingdom Hearts 3 has probably the most amount of unique boss themes in its soundtrack, and all of them are absolute bangers. As with Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, the Gummy Ship music is also completely absent, which is disappointing especially considering just how good it all was in Kingdom Hearts 3. In terms of other tracks featured in Melody of Memory that didn't originate from a specific game in the series, there are 8 tracks. They are Hand in Hand, Working Together Allegro Vivace, Sora Allegro con Brio, and Medley of Conflict from the various Piano Collection's Kingdom Hearts albums, D'Estate from the Kingdom Hearts Orchestra World Tour album, as well as the tracks Beauty and the Beast from the film of the same name, A Whole New World from Aladdin, and finally Circle of Life from The Lion King. These tracks are all fairly nice, but the inclusion of the original Disney tracks feels a bit random and a little half-hearted due to how few of them are actually included. Overall, I'd say the song selection in Melody of Memory is really good, but not perfect, as some of the omissions, in particular the Gummy Ship missions, the few completely omitted Disney worlds, as well as the swath of missing Kingdom Hearts 3 tracks, prevent it from truly shining. Another thing worth mentioning is that there are no tracks from Remind, Union Cross or Back Cover present, though that's mostly to be expected as Union Cross and Back Cover don't really fit in with the narrative, and Remind was made whilst Melody of Memory was mid-development. I will say that the most disappointing thing about the track list is that because it omits entire Disney worlds as well as a lot of the tracks from Kingdom Hearts 3, it somewhat masks the entire revisiting your memories of the series through song vibe the game is going for, since how can it fully capitalise on that if entire worlds, the tracks you hear when heading to those worlds, or most of an entire mainline entry's tracks are all missing? The game does, however, feature almost all of the most beloved and important tracks you'd expect to see in a game like this though, and the overall track selection is quite satisfying and comprehensive despite my complaints, so I can definitely say that most people will be happy with the track list featured in this game, though there will still be those little niggles that you'll have with it. Hopefully this game will receive some downloadable content in the future that will patch up some of those rough edges in the song list, but at present that doesn't look likely due to comments Nomura's made prior to the game's launch about how they don't intend DLC for this game, but you know, things change over time. In terms of the sound quality itself, the audio quality is superb, especially with a decent pair of headphones or external speakers. Interestingly, the versions of the Kingdom Hearts 1, 2 and Rechain of Memories tracks that they used was the original versions from the PlayStation 2 releases, rather than the reorchestrated, remade tracks from the 1.5 and 2.5 HD remixes. Personally, that's a little disappointing because to me the reorchestrated tracks all had a lot more depth and instrumentation that made a lot of those tracks really shine, but again, it's all down to personal preference. That being said, the way that Melody of Memory utilises the gameplay in combination with the music really elevates some of these tracks to a whole new level on reflection. Even ones that I previously disliked, such as some of the music from the Monstro world in KH1. For example, all of the music beats and button presses are timed well with the music and often change mid-song what part of the song's instrumentation that they're in time to, causing you to subconsciously differentiate each instrument in the song in your head, allowing you to start noticing every little nuance to each track, and increasing your overall appreciation of them. Honestly, the way the gameplay and the music work together in tandem to not only provide an enjoyable play experience, but an incredible auditory experience at the same time, is easily Melody of Memory's greatest achievement, as it really excels at lovingly showcasing just why Kingdom Hearts has one of the best video game soundtracks out there, and it's just an absolute joy and nostalgic thrill ride to play because of that. The voice acting in the game is also some of the best voice acting in the series, at least in terms of the English dub, with Alison Stoner reprising her role as Kairi from Kingdom Hearts 3, and narrating most of the game's cutscenes with all the emotional weight and nuance that you'd want when reflecting back on all of the series' most iconic moments. The new story sections too have great voice acting, with several of the characters from Kingdom Hearts 3 and Remind returning to provide some well-acted exposition.
Meanwhile, Riku and Mickey were forced to confront Aqua, whose heart had fallen into darkness.
Overall, when it comes to its soundtrack, as well as its sound quality, Melody of Memory is absolutely superb, with the only real flaws being certain aspects of its song list. If there's one thing a rhythm game has to absolutely nail, it's the way the gameplay interacts with the music, as well as the overall sound quality, and I'm happy to say that in both regards Melody of Memory is quite easily the best rhythm game I've played in that regard. Let's now discuss the game's various unlockables, how you obtain them, as well as what completionist requirements there are for people looking to get the most out of Melody of Memory. Firstly, in regards to unlockable songs, as mentioned earlier, you'll need to play every song available in the World Tour mode to unlock them as playable in the track selection mode in Sound Player. You also need to complete most of the missions in the World Tour mode to unlock all the progression gates, in particular the ones blocking off a secret final mix branch of songs. You also need to synthesize any songs in the synthesis menu to unlock those in the track selection as well, though by the time you've completed most of the World Tour mode, you should have enough materials to craft most, if not all of the songs, so it's no big deal. Some songs are also unlocked by reaching a certain milestone of total rhythm points, which is a cumulative point total that increases with each song cleared. The songs unlocked through reaching different point totals are primarily the various songs by Utada Hikaru. The various different game modes such as track selection, versus battle and the museum are unlocked from progressing through the World Tour mode, then playing a song or two in the track selection. As mentioned earlier, all of the playable teams are unlocked through World Tour progression as well. There are also a plethora of collectible cards that can be obtained through pretty much everything in the game, from drops during songs to clear rewards, reaching rhythm point milestones, synthesis, and so on. From my understanding, none of these cards heavily influence the game in any meaningful way or count towards any PlayStation trophies or Xbox achievements, but they are a nice little visual reward that offer high quality renders of various Kingdom Hearts characters, keyblades or scenes for those that are interested in appreciating the art. On the topic of PlayStation trophy and Xbox achievement completion, Melody of Memory is a fairly relaxing and pain-free experience on that front, with the most challenging trophy requiring you to full chain 50 songs on Proud difficulty, which can be tough initially, though once you've got to grips with the controls and the song's note patterns, you should be able to ace it no problem. There are some grindy and tedious trophies that may dissuade some people though, as you've got to clear all 150 music tracks in the game on each difficulty, as well as defeat a cumulative of 100,000 enemies, which can take a long while to achieve. Still, it's easily the least painful or tedious Kingdom Hearts game to 100% complete despite that, and the records section of the museum allows you to easily track your progress towards each trophy, as well as hint at how to unlock all of the in-game achievements called feats that require you to complete various other tasks on top of the console achievement list. So overall, after every point we've gone over and identifying and judging pretty much every aspect of the game, is it worth paying full price for, and what sort of audience will this game appeal to? Well, personally, I absolutely adored almost every aspect of the game, from the incredibly satisfying rhythm action gameplay that elevates the gorgeous soundtrack to new levels, to the nostalgic ride through familiar worlds and iconic story moments. This is a game that very much feels like it treats the series and its music with the utmost respect, and though there are some flaws, it comes quite close to feeling like the perfect rhythm game, both in terms of content as well as core functionality. Not many rhythm games feature more than 100 tracks, let alone 150, and none that I've played have managed to integrate the gameplay with the music in such an impressive way. I really do love this game. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say it's now within my top 3 Kingdom Hearts series games in general. Sure, it doesn't form any unique or emotional memories like the other games do, but it instead uses the music of the series effectively to make you reminisce on those memories you do have from the other games. So as a hardcore fan of the series, I can confidently say that anyone who is a fan of Kingdom Hearts will definitely enjoy Melody of Memory and what it has to offer. And the ending will definitely make you curious to see where the series goes from here, because whilst the new story elements are brief, they are really effective and will definitely cause tons of excitement and speculation within the Kingdom Hearts fan community, if they haven't already. Not only that, but I now consider it my benchmark title for judging other rhythm games, as it feels like a complete evolution on previous Theatrhythm games, both in terms of how good its different game modes are, as well as how good the gameplay is. The real question is though, does this game manage to appeal to any other audiences aside from the hardcore fans? Well, it's really difficult to say. I think people who enjoy rhythm games are definitely going to be able to get a lot out of this game as well, despite perhaps not being familiar with the story or having the nostalgic fondness towards all the moments, both musical and visual, on display here. Anyone else though? I'm really not sure. If you don't really enjoy rhythm games, then I'm not sure if this game will appeal to you at all, and if you're neutral to rhythm games, then it might be worth trying out the demo to see if the gameplay loop and music suit your personal preferences. For that reason, I'd say for any Kingdom Hearts fans or rhythm game fanatics, this game is definitely worth paying full price for, as the story, gameplay and music are all pretty damn near perfect, and even though the game reuses art assets constantly, it utilises them in new and interesting ways that help to make the full package all the more greater. For the people who aren't fans of the series or rhythm games, I'd say give this a skip or wait until it's severely discounted before giving it a go. Though, who knows, perhaps it will manage to make you have second thoughts about your feelings on the series or genre if you do play it, so I guess just play it by ear. And finally, for those in between who play rhythm games casually or have a passing interest in the Kingdom Hearts series, I'd say wait for a sale, as to some the game will be worth a lot more than it will for others, and I think in this case, because of how niche the rhythm game market is in terms of its target audience, a lot of people will probably wait until a sale to give this a go, especially since other Kingdom Hearts games go on sale constantly, so it's kind of expected that this one will be the same down the line. Also, especially what with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X launching around the same time, surrounded by a plethora of next-gen games, I'm not sure many people will really have this as their priority. In these trying times, a lot of people only have so much in their budget to allocate towards games, and that's why I recommend most people wait until a sale. Normally I'd be urging people to pay full price and enjoy what I believe to be one of the best rhythm games ever, but I know that with the current pandemic we're in, being selective about what games you buy at launch is important. But yeah, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory. It's a brilliant game in my opinion, and one of the final standout titles to bring this generation of consoles to a close. What did you think of the game if you've played it? Let me know in the comments below. I'm quite curious to see what everyone's impressions of the game are, as I personally enjoyed it, but I know my opinion isn't the only one. As always, if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. Also, if you like this video, then perhaps you'd like some of my other reviews. I always have a lot to say when it comes to video games, and I do hope you enjoy hearing me prattle on about them. Until next time though guys, this has been Kingdom H, and I'll see you next time. See ya!